Hi, this is Evan, and I'm your host for Wine Couch TV. As we so often do on our weekly episodes, today we're going to focus on two wines, the foods that go with them, and talk a little bit about the region from which these wines actually originate. Today we're going to talk about Rioja. Now, Rioja is a wine-producing area in Spain, probably the most renowned area for producing red table wines in all of Spain, and is situated in the northwestern part of the country. The wines here are blended wines. So that is to say, don't go to the store and ask for a Rioja grape wine because Rioja itself is a region. The grapes that go into Rioja are Tempranillo, which pretty much drives most of the wines, Grenache, or the Garnacha, as they call it in Spain, and a little bit of Mazuelo, which is another grape that we know as Carignan in other parts of the world, or Carignana. Now, these particular wines are assembled very much the way a grape Bordeaux is, but they have a uniquely Spanish flair, which, rather than talk about it, let's go ahead and taste the wines. The first wine we have in front of us is a Castillo Labastida, and this is a 2003 vintage wine, and it's specifically labeled Crianza. Now, what Crianza means is it's seen at least 6 months of time in an oak barrel and 6 months of time in bottle before the wine is sold. It's important to note terminology on Spanish wine bottles, and specifically in Rioja, because each wine label will give you a very different wine. Now, this particular wine has all of the classic hallmarks of a Tempranillo-driven wine, which is to say it's got a nice sort of cherry, slight plum, and almost deep black raspberry character, but it also has a distinctive note of what I would call a balsamico, which is to say this interesting combination of flavors that range from bay leaf to a little bit of curry powder to just a hint of coriander in the wine as well. This wine has nice acidity to it, which is to say it kind of grips your mouth and it's a little bit sharp. The tannins, which we associate with that sort of puckery, astringent character in a red wine, are present but not overly hard. The wine is distinctively medium body and echoes very much the flavors that we found in the nose, which is to say a little bit of that sort of cherry, black raspberry character, a little bit of that sort of laurel, just a touch of almost a sandalwood or exotic coriander type character, and a nice, enjoyable tasty finish. It's priced every day, so I would rush out and buy some of this wine. It's quite good. Our second wine is also a Rioja. It's also from the 2003 vintage. However, it is a Reserva bottling from the Lorion winery. Now, this particular wine, being a Reserva, means it has a mandated minimum of 1 year in oak barrel and 1 year in bottle before it's sold. So you're going to get a little bit more definition from that oak and a little bit more complexity from that additional time in bottle age. When we talk about Rioja, for me, Reserva is sort of the sweet spot. Crianzas are a little bit young, nice, affordable, everyday, enjoyable wines. The Joven wines are a little bit easy and grapey, and the Gran Reserva wines are very much an acquired taste. So Reserva is the sweet spot of all Rioja. Now, this wine has a distinctive sort of wonderful, rich, earthy tone, a little bit of cocoa, a little bit of dried earth, almost a dusty character, but again, that same pronounced sort of black plum, a little bit of black cherry character. And once again, this sort of nice herbal, but not herbaceous, but herbal character, a dried leaf, perhaps a little bit more marjoram, a little less bay in this one, maybe even a little bit of thyme. Very complex, a lot going on, but in a premium priced wine at a Reserva labeling, you would expect that. This wine is a bit more generous in the palate. It's a slightly richer wine. Again, has that same vibrancy of acidity that I associate with Tempranillo, and a softer tannic package, which is to say that additional time in bottle has sort of softened and mellowed the tannins, making for a very enjoyable wine, both with food and on its own. Speaking of food, what do you do with Rioja and Tempranillo in general? Well, all throughout Spain, this is very much of a red meat wine, and it's usually focusing on two animals. One would be lambs, and any sort of lamb, whether it's roast lamb, lamb chops, a roast, a full leg of lamb or something like that with Rioja is absolutely dynamite. If you can pick up on some of those herbal characters or a little bit of roasting to get some of that sweetness out of the wine, it's going to work, or the food rather, that's going to work for you really, really nicely. The other thing they eat a lot of in Spain is, of course, ham. And whether you're doing basic jamon or you're doing any sort of a lomo, the pork stew or something like that, it's going to go beautifully as well with Rioja, particularly if you pick up on some of those earthier elements in stewing or something like that. So, today's Wine Couch word of the week is Navarra. Now, Navarra is not a winemaking term, rather references a specific winemaking area which is actually right next door to Rioja to the east. Here the wines are focused more on Grenache than they are on the Tempranillo grape, which we talked about in adjacent Rioja before. They're known for two styles of wine. One are their sort of rich, flavorful rosés, and for me, the best rosés in all of Spain are made in the Navarra region. So when you go out there, look for those wines. They also make a lot of wonderful, basic red Grenache-based wines, which are delicious, and increasingly, in some of the higher altitude vineyards, they are growing some Tempranillo, which may give those folks in Rioja a little bit of run for their money. So rush out to the store, check out a little bit of that Navarra wine, and enjoy the rest of your summer. Anyway, until we get together next time, you take care and go visit a little bit in Spain.